Hello and welcome, everybody. My name's Chapman. I'm here today to talk to you all things AI and security, looking at how we currently use AI and security, but also how that's evolving and how we're seeing criminals also utilize this technology. I'm the SVP of Threat Intelligence at Egress, and it's my job and mission to really understand the threat landscape and how these evolving technologies are impacting our ecosystems. And I think it's safe to say that AI really is sort of redefining how we evaluate the landscape. It's actually becoming increasingly rare not to see a cyber offering without AI in. And this is fantastic from sort of the benefits it can deliver to organizations, improving security, the automation behind it. However, like all new technologies, there are certain downsides we need to consider and mitigate to get the most out of these sort of technical advancements. And I think it's safe to say that as the trend of utilizing these new technologies in cybersecurity is going to continue, it's important that we, on the side of the cybersecurity practitioners, truly understand the good, the bad, and the ugly behind all of these use cases. So, first of all, I'd like to start off just talking through a couple of high-level considerations. And these are really important. These are sort of the underlying building blocks to get the most out of utilizing AI and ML. First and foremost, it's all about what we feed into these systems and what we get out of these systems and how we validate that. I think the old saying of garbage in, garbage out is incredibly relevant in this case, that if for whatever reason the data we're training these models on is biased or corrupt or actually not what we're going to be using in a production environment, that does invalidate and actually creates security loopholes and sort of negative outcomes for utilizing this system. And that's really why, even going beyond the inputs and outputs and how it's learning and processing in the first place, why data bias matters so much. And when we're looking at the testing and training stages of utilizing these new technologies, it's important that we understand what biases are inherent, as they're only as smart as the data we put in. The other key thing to understand is that attackers are evolving as well. They also have access to all of this technology and understand how you might build robust defenses using AI. As such, they're ready to attack this almost new landscape and the verticals that this enables. The last thing to really consider is how robust is the solution that we've created using AI actually? Because one of the dangers, especially with anything on the sort of black box side of AI, where you don't have as much visibility in terms of what it's doing, it's important to always question and validate that actually the security we're gaining from these models are the security we are actually being delivered into the production environment, and you don't have an unintended gap that would definitely lead to a negative outcome. I'd like to talk through sort of 3 AI methods and sort of high-level technologies and how to really evaluate and sort of what questions to be asking. Take some practical examples here. First and foremost is any AI built upon social graphing. This is the sort of node-to-node methodology. There's a lot of AI families that fit into this, but essentially it's understanding points of data, your nodes, the vertices that connect them, what connects these two people, for example. This is great from a structural point of view. It's incredibly easy to create different feedback loops based on this data structure. However, attackers know this as well. And this is one of the reasons why we're seeing such a sharp rise in supply chain compromise in the email security space. The fact that actually by compromising a pre-existing account that is already deemed known good by a lot of AI systems, it allows the attacker to actually skip the security queue. The other key part around social graphing is the fact that attackers can quite easily poison this method. One example we see in the email landscape quite often is attackers will actually send benign emails, safe emails for a duration of time to build up their trust before they actually send their malicious payload. Going on from social graphing, another common use case we see is everything in the natural language processing or natural language understanding space, all about understanding text like a human would, which is an incredibly powerful tool to have, especially when evaluating large data spaces or things like email communications, document evaluation, and so on. What we're seeing on the criminal landscape side, however, is that actually they're building systems to defeat these systems directly. So they might actually insert hidden characters into bodies of text. They might use the sort of Asian override character, which makes the system read it from right to left rather than left to right when evaluating the English language. And it's these techniques which essentially undermine the security in place. And where this becomes more dangerous is if you start training on these data sets, assuming that they're benign, because then it learns that this negative behavior is actually good. And that leads on to probably the most broadest use case for AI in security is all around anomaly detection. Anomaly detection is incredibly powerful by differentiating good and bad and highlighting those trends which don't sit normally. And this is used all across everything from AV scanning, all the way email security, all the way through to even things like policy compliance. However, from an attacker's point of view, this is essentially teaching them, okay, all I have to do is act normally, and I can bypass these systems, which does add constraints to them. But similarly to social graphing, we see a lot of data poisoning coming into effect here, where an attacker can create a new trend of what normal looks like in order to bypass this anomaly detection. Just as a bonus, because it's such a commonly used feature in sort of the email security space and beyond, is the human feedback. And quite often, this is sort of a go-to feedback loop for training AI models because it's incredibly easy to implement and everything is validated by a human. It bypasses a lot of the other weaknesses. One downside to this, especially in a security space where in broader technology this isn't the case, is these are non-expert users feeding back in. If you look to even your own simulation training on what percentage of users can actually identify a phish, because at the end of the day, on human feedback loops, the AI is only as good as the data that's fed back into it. And there's a lot of benefits to using human feedback loops. However, it's important to have an expert layer in place so that it's not poisoned by this. So what we see is actually, if you have non-expert data being fed into these systems, it can actually cause it to deviate and not deliver on what its intended purpose is. Saying all of this, and I have sort of given you almost the dark side of here are the threats and dangers of AI and security. I want to re-emphasize AI is great for security. It moves beyond sort of a reactive approach to a more proactive approach and eliminating the need for static rules. It can find threats and trends that humans would have missed at much greater scales. And most importantly, it can also free up resources like your threat hunting team to actually pursue other objectives that would add more value for your organizations. So despite these potential downsides, if they're unmitigated, it's definitely an asset for security. But because it's an asset for security, and I mentioned this at the top of this video, is cyber criminals are using AI as well. We're seeing it deeply used in deep fakes in order to create fake Zoom calls is the latest trend, but also fake voice notes, fake imagery, in order to improve their credibility and attack people. One way that it really has moved the threat landscape is actually in the OSINT space, on the open source intelligence, and being able to collate and almost automate targeted attacks based on publicly available information at a scale never seen before. And when I evaluate where the dangers are in the space, it really does come down to the ability to automatically personalize these attacks against individuals and against organizations. And this is an area of space that is in its infancy, but will continue to progress. So my ask and sort of a takeaway from this is, what questions should you be asking as a cybersecurity leader in this space? First and foremost is, does this technology actually need AI? Will this AI solve all of my issues? The answer is no. It should be, this is a tool to solve a specific problem, not just using it for the sake of it. And any AI you implement, you need to make sure that those models are protected from an attacker manipulating, ensure that the inputs are clean and expected, and make sure that any implementation does fit your personal and organization's threat landscape in order to get the most out of this technology. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'd love to hear from you.